Welcome to the Internet History Podcast. I'm your host, Brian McCullough. Gregg Spiridellis has been making things go viral on the web since before the term viral was even a thing. His company JibJab has been producing web videos since the dial-up .com era, producing such hits as Elf Yourself, Nasty Santa, and This Land Is Your Land. JibJab has survived the .com bust, the coming of broadband, the coming of YouTube, the coming of social media, and also the mobile internet. What you'll hear today is absolutely a masterclass in pivoting and adapting a business model to thrive in every new technology environment and embracing every new platform and paradigm. Please enjoy. Gregg Spiridellis, thanks for coming on the Internet History Podcast.
Thank you for having me. Big fan of the show.
Well, thank you so much. I've noticed a trend that people that get into the internet game during the .com era, maybe half of them were on Wall Street or finance beforehand. Right. It's almost like that was the job for ambitious people in the 80s, yes. And then it switched in the 90s. So you're one of these guys.
I was on the cusp. Yeah, I lived both of those lives.
So like Goldman Sachs and
Sure.
Bear Stearns.
Yep.
And so I think it's you're actually getting your MBA
Yep.
in the late 90s.
That's correct.
And what is it? You see the animations and stuff that can be done on the web, or your brother sees it? Or
Yeah, I saw it. So it actually bridged back to the investment banks. And so in the investment banks back in the day, when you needed a 10K, a public filing of a company, there'd be someone who'd print them off of CDs, and there'd be someone pushing a cart around the hallways of the cubicles and handing you big documents. And I discovered Edgar on a Mosaic browser that could let me pipe right into the SEC and get this information. It would mean I would work, 80 hours instead of 120 waiting for documents.
Isn't that so funny to think about? But like when we talk about how the web and the internet has changed, basic information that you just go to the internet and find that.
Oh, no.
That was a revelation.
Oh, it was amazing.
Yeah.
I was like a superhero because I had figured out this way for analysts like myself to get this information without waiting for the guy with the cart to come around. And so it had kindled an interest in the internet for me. And then I went to business school. I went to Wharton. And my brother was an animator. He went to Parsons School of Design, just a brilliant craftsperson, digital craftsperson using digital photography, wanted to do a television show. And so when I was at business school, I became a hobbyist. I was really interested in the internet. And then one day I saw a full-color, audio-enabled cartoon streaming over a 56K modem through my phone line. And I called my brother and I said, you have to stop thinking about television. This is, the Model T is rolling off the line. Don't bang out the horseshoes. Take a look at this, see if we can do something. And he picked up the software and he started making little animations, and he would email them to me, and I would give him some ideas, and we'd go back and forth. And before you knew it, I graduated business school, and we hung a shingle.
So this is Flash animation?
Yeah, Flash animation. So back in the day, it was actually called Future Splash first, and then it was bought by a company called Macromedia,
right.
And then it was Flash and Shockwave.
Right?
And,
that's what I was going to ask.
Yeah, so that was the interactive. Originally, Shockwave you could do interactive things with it, but it was for CD-ROM authoring. But Flash didn't have interactivity, and over time we developed interactivity. And actually, some of our earliest hits on the web were these little interactive toys that you could play with, that were photo collage animation.
So let's put the time frame in context. This is 98, 99 maybe?
99. So
99.
we started in October of 1999. We spent the first month building out the site, producing some content. We launched our site in November of 99.
And it was JibJab from day one?
It was JibJab.com from day one.
Where did the name come from?
The name, we knew that we didn't know what we were going to evolve into. And so we had a couple of rules around the name. One is it couldn't mean anything specific, so we didn't want to be the cartoonguys.com. 2, we decided it had to sound fun, so we wanted it to be 2 syllables, something that sounded punchy, and then 7 letters or less, because back then there was no autofill, like you had to type the full word into the browser address bar.
Yeah.
So JibJab.com was on a list of about 50 names. It was actually a name that I had come up with for another idea while I was in business school, but it just fit, and I don't know if we grew into that name or that name just suited us, but it's worked great for 18 years now.
So you said that you didn't necessarily know what it would evolve into as a business, but if you can go back to that mind space, what are you imagining you're doing? Are you creating like a next generation studio? Are you imagining you're Disney for the 21st century someday?
Our first pitch deck, Saturday Night Live for the internet, an umbrella brand with lots of little different properties under it. So we were producing short form animated series under the JibJab banner, and it was really about, we can cut out the middleman. We don't need to go through the mega media conglomerates to get to an audience. We can build a direct audience with users, and we can produce lots of different entertainment under that brand. And we had no idea how we were going to make money yet. There's one of my favorite photos of me and my brother from the early days is we're holding up a check, and I think it was for $1.87 for like a month of advertising revenue from our site. But we knew that if we produced quality content, people would share it. So there was no concept of viral back then, but the idea was you create something of quality, people will send it around, and if we could build an audience and we can keep people's attention, the money would flow into the medium. We weren't worried about that. People will always pay for an audience's attention. We just didn't know how long it would take.
So the site was conceived of as a destination.
Yes.
For
entertainment, exactly.
So part of the thinking in this is probably also the falling cost of the technology. You guys can do things that a decade ago would cost millions of dollars to produce, but
yes,
you can do it off software. But also, it's clearly the opportunity of the distribution channel. The web is galactic, right?
Yeah, there are the two big shifts we saw. One, production costs were falling. So things that would cost millions of dollars a few years before even were now accessible to anybody with a desktop computer and $1,000 or a few $100s worth of software. So that meant capital was no longer a barrier to entry, talent was. And my brother was coming out of art school, and he knew he had this amazing network of talented folks that he knew. And then the second piece was distribution was opening. You no longer needed to go work through a distributor to get to an audience. And again, it was that idea, if we create something of value, people will share it, and we'll be able to get distribution.
We're going to get deep into the sharing aspect of it. But, okay, so when you launch...
So we launched in November '99.
How does anyone hear about it?
We send it to our friends and family and say, hey, look what we're doing, and if you think this is funny, send it to your friends. And that was it. It started with our contact managers.
What were the videos that were on there?
We knew that what we produced had to be relevant to an audience, and so we launched with a series called Nasty Santa. And it was a bunch of it was short form. They were almost gags. I hate to say they were short form. They were maybe 15 seconds to 30 seconds, but just these little funny sketches of an ornery Santa Claus who just is having a really bad day. And we were going into Christmas, and so we had a sense that would work really well, and people would share it, something that's relevant. And then in February of 2000, we launched something called the Founding Fathers, the Mother Faux Fathers, and it was Ben Franklin, Thomas Jefferson, and who's the last one? George Washington rapping about the Declaration of Independence. So pre-Hamilton, rapping about the Declaration of Independence, and it was interactive, which was a cool thing. So they were all kind of hanging out, and you'd click on George Washington, then he'd come out and he'd give his rhyme, and then he'd pull back. And that was our first hit. And when I say hit back then, nobody was on the internet. There was like 12 geeks and a TV station called Tech TV, and when we landed on Tech TV with Leo Laporte, we thought we had made it. It was amazing.
Well, also contextually, this is the dial-up era, so let me just stop me if I get this wrong, but so I would have gotten an email with a link to a video to the Rapping Presidents, right?
Yep.
And I would click on it and I'd go to the website and I would have to have the plugin for my browser.
Plug-in, yeah.
So it's not literally emailing me the video at all.
Oh no.
Right.
No, email a video?
Exactly.
Yeah.
And if I'm lucky, if you guys have a decent setup, it might start playing within 10 seconds, but I might also have to download and then watch. So,
well, this was a credit to my brother. He could figure out how to work with the limitations of the technology to create a compelling aesthetic. So with Flash, the way the technology worked was you downloaded a symbol, say the face, a photo collage face, and then you could use that face over the entire course of a video without having to download every frame. So it was vector animation, so you were sending actually formulas over the telephone wire and not pixels. And so all of the content we were producing back then was very much designed aesthetically to work with the limitations of the technology. And so that was a competitive advantage for us, is we could figure out how to how to make things look really cool in a way you could never do, because video didn't work. This was not video. This was a client-side piece of software that reassembled components in a way that created the sense of a full-length video. But we weren't pumping video over 56K modems. And my brother, I think the founding fathers was maybe 300K. Like, that's 0.3 megabytes, you know?
So, are you having to, well, actually, I'll get into that by saying this. So the Founding Fathers is the first big hit. What does that mean in 99 or 2000? Like, server overload, you're seeing like 10,000 people come in an hour, 100,000. What does that feel like to have a hit?
In 2000, I'm trying to remember the numbers, and I don't want to misquote them, but it wasn't hundreds of thousands.
Right.
And we can talk about what happened with this land way later.
Sure.
So it was not. We were on a shared server, like a shared box somewhere. I mean, there was no cloud. There was there was nothing like that. We were on a shared box. And a hit back then probably meant, I want to say 10,000 people saw what you did. But this was a time when people didn't even know, if you said internet to somebody, it was more likely than not that they didn't know what you were talking about.
Well, this is also before the concept of viral is commonplace.
Absolutely, yeah.
But you guys are already doing it because every video has a email this button or share this. Tell me about that.
Yeah, so from the very beginning, we were really focused from a product standpoint on surrounding the content with viral elements. And we didn't even know that they were called viral elements then. So every piece of content, right next to the content, there was a form, where you could pop in email addresses and hit a button and send it out. And there was also a subscribe to our newsletter form field as well. So we were really focused on leveraging the audience to distribute the content from the very beginning, but also to get that hook into the audience so that over time we could build a core base of users, and every time we'd launch a video, it would get easier to reach an audience. And that came in real handy later on when we launched This Land, which was our first breakout kind of mass market hit.
So you're not necessarily, aside from the pennies you're getting from your double-click ads or whatever, those first years, are you making most of your money by commissioned projects from other, who are you?
So service work. So we were doing. We were in a really unique position in that there were a lot of media companies that were interested in exploring animation on the internet, and very few people who knew how to do it. So we were doing just enough commissioned work to support the original content programming, and so some of our clients in the early days included the Sci-Fi Channel. Macromedia Flash had a site where you could send e-cards. So even though today we've got a very big e-card business, back then most of our business was coming from producing e-cards for Shockwave.com, which was Macromedia's kind of consumer-facing content site. Portal. So we did Shockwave e-cards. We worked with Disney. We worked with Sony. So we had a nice batch of clients. But when you're starting out a business, whether it's today or back then, it's great if you have a skill set where you can actually generate some revenue from, to support kind of the bigger vision. And for us, it was always, where's that line? It was never about driving profit from the service work. It was always about, feeding the habit, making sure we were getting enough cash flow in that we could keep investing in original programming and the bigger vision.
Well, you and I were talking about this a little bit before we started, but 99 especially, people forget this. Everyone remembers, pets.com and the .coms, but there was, especially in 99 into 2000, a ton of people all at once throwing money into video.
Yeah.
There's pop.com, z.com,
den.net.
People like Ron Howard think that they're creating the next generation, production studios and things like that.
Yep.
So just tell me about the space and the competition, and does anyone know what they're doing?
It came out of nowhere.
Yeah.
So, it came on so fast, and because we had been doing what we were doing for 6 weeks, we were like experts in the space. I mean, it came that fast, and like you said, it was den.net, pop.com, z.com, atomfilms.com, iFilm, and then some of the kind of more like Newgrounds. There was just all of these sites that were cropping up around entertainment. But where it became really interesting was when the big money started coming in, and that was the den.nets and the pop.coms, Ron Howard and Brian Grazer and all those guys. And they started doing the big parties, and it became like the classic .com 1.0, like overindulge in the parties, and no one knew what they were doing. So my these folks were licensing from us, which was great for our business because the venture money was flowing into all these distributors, and the distributors had nowhere to go they had to find content, so they would come to us and they would license our content. And so we had all of these people we were dealing with. We were in Brooklyn at the time, and all these folks, mostly for the most part, were in LA. And I took a trip out there one summer. I think it was the summer of 2000, or maybe it might have been 2001. And I did a little tour of all these studios. I think I was in z.com, and I called my brother and I was like, they have the best looking people, an amazing cappuccino bar, and a giant fish tank. I have no idea what anybody's doing here. We are totally screwed. This whole, all of these businesses that are funding us with licensing contracts are going to go poof at some point. I don't know if it's next week or next month, but we better start thinking about what happens when all these folks go bankrupt. And sure enough, they all went bankrupt because there was no ad-supported model, and there was nothing of quality to warrant a subscription, and actually no payment infrastructure at the time to even support that kind of thing. And so sure enough, then came 9/11 and everything unwound. And
I never know who to attribute it to, but there's that quote that when the pretty people show up, that's when you know
it's time to go. No, it was that was it, and it was Los Angeles, so It was pretty extreme.
So the bubble bursts, and think of, this is 18 months you go from business doesn't exist to suddenly you're the experts in the field to suddenly everyone's throwing money at you to suddenly it's
gone.
Yeah,
absolutely gone. And we had bootstrapped up to about 13 people in Brooklyn, and so we made toys. So this was the great thing about the internet. If you hustled, it empowered two people sitting in Brooklyn with no experience in anything to kind of hustle their way out of these bad situations. So what happened after the crash, I'd mentioned this character Nasty Santa, who had this little kind of cult following online, and I found Spencer Gifts. I said, hey, I wonder if we could make toys with this character, because he's like this kind of edgy character. If we could make toys for Spencer Gifts. And Spencer Gifts, for those who don't know, is a retail chain that's got, edgy merchandise. Stuff you'd never find in Walmart.
They'd probably prefer the term novelty gift.
Novelty, okay.
Yeah.
Yes, that's true. So I found out on the internet that they had an open vendor day, and then I was like, I'll just go into open vendor day and tell them we have 5 million online views for Nasty Santa, and people love this character, and they should buy a talking Nasty Santa doll. So I got that scheduled on the internet, and then keep in mind I'd never sold a toy in my life. I don't know this, but and then we found on the internet, we just started looking for toy factories in China. Found a bunch of toy factories, put a picture of the character, emailed it to these folks, and said, "Here's an RFP for 5,000 units." and we need your sample by this date to be considered. And by the appointed date, we had like 20 of these crazy, nasty Santa dolls show up from all over China. We picked the best one, went down to Spencer Gifts, got an order for 5,000, nasty Santa dolls, and we were in the toy business while we waited for the .com storm to pass.
You moved out to LA too, right?
Yeah.
Yeah,
so
at that point.
Yeah, so we moved out after that so it was 9/11, and then the following, that winter after 9/11, we said, the internet's not coming back for what we do anytime soon. Let's hit the reset button and rebuild out in LA.
My memory of the time is it felt to so many people like, oh, that was just a fad. Haha. We were never really serious about it either. The internet's not going to work out. What do you remember about, like, because you guys are still committed to trying to do video online, right?
Oh yeah.
But what are people's feelings about, oh, that's over, or what?
Oh, I mean, the internet was the joke then, right?
Yeah,
it was the irrational exuberance. It was the bubble had burst. That was crazy. Look how stupid people could be. They thought that the internet was going to be something. I mean, this was really not an optimistic time if you were in the internet.
Yeah.
And so we moved out to LA, set up a small studio, and we just kept plugging away at it. We kept looking for ways to iterate our content formats.
So you never stopped producing stuff for JibJab at the same time?
No, we never stopped producing. And it was one of the great blessings that we did not take money. We never raised venture money or in the early days. And because I was an investment banker, I had people coming to me saying, you want to raise $1 million? And I'm like, I have no idea where the money is going to come from to build a real business here. I mean, I believe in it, but I don't want to take your money.
Yeah.
And it was one of the things that I think enabled us to survive the winter, because we didn't have anybody, who was anyone else that we had to answer to. We just could kind of keep believing ourselves and keep plugging away at it. So we went out to LA and we were doing we were doing sponsor work, so commissioned work. We were doing toys. We grew our Spencer toy line gift into 12 SKUs in the second season that we were doing novelty toys.
And they sold well
They
enough to
sold
keep the
great.
lights on? Yeah, okay.
They sold great. I mean, the problem was they were so edgy, we could never take them to Walmart, so you were always capped on how big that business was going to be. But for two of us sitting in a little studio in LA making 12 SKUs that were distributed to 700 stores, it paid the rent, paid the rent. And then we were just plugging, and then we did a children's book. We wrote a children's book. My brother illustrated a children's book for Disney. That was a top holiday book for Disney Hyperion in 2003. It's called Are You Grumpy Santa? It was great because we had the same exact Santa in the center aisle of Barnes & Noble in the children's book section. And then if you walk across the mall to Spencer Gifts, you'd see the same character, and if you squeezed him, he'd say, kiss my jolly fat.
You guys really owe Santa. You wrote him
hey, Santa has been very, very good to JibJab. Christmas has been elf yourself, and we get there.
Yeah.
Christmas has been very, very good to JibJab.
I heard you on talk about by the time This Land comes around in 2004, you guys even for your optimism are almost at the point where maybe this internet thing isn't going to work out. Is that, do I have that right?
You have that absolutely right. I mean, we were people thought we were an overnight success. We were 4.5 years into producing and building and developing. And we knew elections were big opportunities, because I skipped over it. But in 2000, after we did the Founding Fathers wrap, that February, that November, or that summer, we released something. It was the George Bush and Al Gore rap battle, and that had gone to the next level. It was on Mad TV, we're on ABC, so that the consumer internet was really starting to kind of percolate. And so we knew in 2004 that elections were an amazing opportunity for comedy, but also the relevance. You could produce something and release it in July that would be relevant through November. So we could produce content that was topical but had a shelf life. And by that point, we had experimented with formats enough. We knew music worked. We knew politics worked. The photo collage style my brother had really developed, what resonated, and so all these pieces,
that sort of like South Park sort of, where it looks like
with big photo heads and the chop jaw mouths,
right?
Which were by the way, output from the constraint of delivering, through the technology.
Right.
It's delivering that one head one
Right.
time that the player on the client side then animated. So the style was informed by the constraint, and so we had iterated the format. And in 2004, when we were like, I don't know, this internet thing, like we're gonna have to go get real jobs. We'd both recently gotten married, and we just didn't know. We thought we were the ones who kind of, who just were hanging on too long. So we said, let's release this, let's see where it goes, and but hopes were not high. But then we created it, and one of the great things about producing something, when you've got something special, and there was about an 8-week production cycle for This Land. And when you're producing something for 8 weeks and you're still laughing at it 8 weeks in, you kind of know you have something special. And so we launched that on July 9th in 2004, and that was kind of a major pivot point for the company.
So obviously people can search for This Land online and watch it, but just describe for me what it was and why you think it hit.
Yeah, so This Land was it was about a minute and a half comedy music video featuring George Bush and Al Gore. For the George Bush, John Kerry, basically singing "This Land Is Your Land" about the 2004 presidential election, and and it was the theme was that it was just that these two candidates were so childish. I mean, we've taken it to a new level nowadays, but back then it was George Bush calling John Kerry a liberal wiener, and John Kerry calling George Bush a right-wing nut job. And it just blew up. It just went absolutely viral from the moment we put it out.
Okay, what does that mean in 2004 then?
So 2004,
to blow up in 2004.
To blow up in 2004, what happened in 2004 was everyone was on the internet in 2004. People were at the internet at work. People had broadband, and more importantly than anything else, everybody was on email. In 2000, email was this esoteric, weird thing that only geeks were doing, or college students. By 2004, mom and dad were emailing. One of the most common things my brother and I heard was people would pull us aside and go, "You did This Land? You're never going to believe this. My dad emailed that to me." Like, dad's emailing was this incredible shift in culture. And that's what lit up the distribution. I think the behavioral piece of it, more than the broadband piece, although they're both important, really enabled it to light on fire. And also back then, people would take a link and email it to their entire contact manager. That was the difference. Like, so those older folks listening, although you can't even imagine this, I mean, younger folks don't even use email. But basically, if you found something funny on the internet, it was not socially unacceptable to copy that link into an email and send it to everybody in your entire address book.
Yeah.
And so it was with that virality, we were able to build a huge audience. And so in terms of view counts, This Land did, and the follow-up we did called Good to Be in DC, did 80 million views during the course of the 2004 election. Keep in mind, this is in a pre-YouTube world. So in addition to having created this thing, we now have to figure out how do we keep servers online.
How did you?
And serving the videos. So this was a lesson in scrappiness. We were on a shared server. We were on a company called Data Return. We were on a shared box. We were paying $400 a month. It was in Texas somewhere. And people loved this video. Like, it's hard to imagine, but back then there was no YouTube. So if you saw a video in July in 2004 on the internet, it was probably our video. Like, this was a novelty. People hadn't seen it. And so everyone who was remotely associated with this, like, took great pride in this video. And so I remember we had this big hosting company, Data Return, and they would have conference rooms full of people trying to figure out how do they help us keep our server up without compromising their entire network. And so what we did, and we were getting other stories, which I can go into, but we were getting emails from soldiers in Saddam Hussein's palaces telling us that the Pentagon had blocked JibJab because we were clogging up the Pentagon's networks in Saddam Hussein's old palaces. NASA called us for a copy to send to the International Space Station. It was crazy. But the technical solution was mirroring. So this thing called mirroring, where we turned our server, people were volunteering their servers to us, and we would ship them the HTML page and the video, and they would put it on their servers. So we had dozens of these, or maybe more, all over the world, the people who volunteered to host it. And then when people came to JibJab.com, we would just randomly pick one of the mirror sites. And we'd iframe them so it looked like JibJab.com, but we were bouncing our visitors to all these different mirrored sites. And we found a revenue opportunity in it, in that we could offer the paid download. Because the site would go down so much because of the traffic, there was a site called Payloads at the time that would let you charge for a digital file. So if you wanted to, you could pay $2.99 and buy the download. So we were there were lots of business hacks as well as technical hacks. Nowadays, kids today, I mean, it's all like turnkey, upload a video to YouTube. But we were
or have a CDN in place so that if
I mean, cloud, all these things. I mean, it's great, but back then, to be able to do the creative content piece of it as well as cobble together the technical piece of it was a competitive advantage. It was really hard to do both of those things, and I think that created a lane for myself and my brother to kind of ride through and build
Just real quick, I know that this is still early days, but did you get any sort of the early social uptick on something like Slashdot or maybe Fark or something like that?
Yeah, Fark. Yeah, absolutely. So, Fark. I'm trying to remember. There was another one, and I'm blanking on. They used to have like Photoshop contests. I can't remember right now.
But you're starting to see what is commonplace now, which is, man, have you seen this video?
Yes.
And people are sharing it on their blog or their
absolutely. Discussion forums everywhere. Oh, and the other thing that accelerated distribution, television. So television became a huge, for the first time, a huge driver of awareness. So we put the video on the site on, I think it was Thursday, July 9th. Friday, Brian Wilson on Fox News called us and put myself and my brother on Fox News and put the video on, and that show spontaneously melted our servers. That was the siren went off. We couldn't keep the site up from that day. And then a week later, we're on the couch with Jay Leno. We're on the Today Show with Matt Lauer. And I mean, keep in mind, this is a couple of weeks after thinking we're going to have to fold up our operation. And the next thing you know, you're sitting on the couch on the Tonight Show. So it was just a magical few months for us. It was just a great validation of all the work we've been doing.
What does that do to the business?
So the business, we were cobbling together revenue every way we could, because we're like, hey, if this is our 15 minutes, we better make the most of it. So I mentioned we did digital downloads. The other thing, one of my favorite stories is the Today Show is coming into our studio on the West Coast at 2 a.m. because they had to, and it was like 10 at night, and I turned to my brother and I said, we should make a DVD. And he said, yeah, let's make a DVD. So I set up a Yahoo store, and he created a fake cover for a DVD, printed it, put it in a DVD cover, and we're on the Today Show. They're like, where can you get these videos? Well, I'm glad you asked, Matt. My brother holds up the case, and we say, you could buy a DVD at JibJab.com. And you can just see Matt Lauer's face. He's like, I just totally walked right into that. We sold 10,000 DVDs. Wow. The first day.
Wow.
And the funniest thing was Yahoo Store had this option where you could automatically, you had to opt in to have them automatically process transactions before you reviewed them. So I wound up with 10,000 transactions that needed to be approved with
by hand.
Yeah, by hand. But that was a great, but then we did licensing. Trivial Pursuits licensed our stuff. We did another DVD deal with a distributor. So, and also licensing. This is where This Land set us up to do exclusive licensing deals with the portals, because back then YouTube didn't exist. Yahoo was our first big licensing partner, and so Yahoo would do what we called a third-party exclusive. Yahoo would be able to show our new videos, and we would distribute them through our site as well.
And so also,
and they would pay us for that.
The new videos that you create in the wake of this. So now you have this audience that is now becoming loyal to your.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, we had a big audience that we could bring. And the one thing, just to go back really quick, about all those years, 4.5 years of putting the subscribe to our newsletter form field on our website, the only marketing we did to kickstart this land was to email 130,000 people on that newsletter, and I think it cost us a few $100. That was the only marketing that we did, and so that's where, like, anybody starting a business, a digital business, like, just have a small, passionate user base, and when you get the right product for that user base, you know, that's all the marketing you need. They'll help spread it.
Help me do justice to the timeline here. Before YouTube comes around and shakes everything up. Do you guys start to do the greeting cards before that, or is that in a response to YouTube?
No, that's later. That's in response. So and at this point we're doing licensing deals. So at first we did Yahoo, and these were these were 6-figure plus deals, and keep in mind it was me and my brother. We'd finally found a way to make a little bit of money doing this.
So JibJab is the brand, and you find all these partners to be the place where people
the distributor. So they distribute on their site, but also ours. We knew we didn't want to let go of the grip of distribution. So we said, you can do it on your site, but we're going to do it on ours as well. And the partners could monetize. At that point, you were starting to see video advertising. There was a market for video advertising, and so there was money to be made. I mean, it was nothing like it is now, but the big portals with big sales teams could actually get out there and find advertisers who wanted to be associated with this kind of content.
So again, this is a very short time frame where you go from almost turning things off and shutting the doors to this huge success to YouTube comes along and blows that whole thing up?
Yeah, so it was December, I think it was December, so this was 04, July 04 we did This Land. We were doing all these exclusive licensing deals. I should also say we got a television pilot deal with NBC, we did a film pilot project with Warner Brothers, and we had the option to do, to pursue either one of those, and we turned it down to focus on the internet, and we raised our first round of capital when YouTube came around, and it was, YouTube was a scary thing because they said, "Oh wow, MSN and Yahoo are paying me to be the exclusive distributor of this," and the genie's out of the bottle. Like, there's no such thing as exclusivity on the internet. YouTube proved it, because the first big hit on YouTube was the Chronicles of Narnia, which is a rip off of Saturday Night Live's content.
Right.
So as soon as I saw that, I saw Chronicles of Narnia, and I said, we're going to have to figure out some new way of making money. And
wait, is that the one? That's the
Adam
one.
Sandberg. And,
right, where they go
rap about the Chronicles.
Right,
of Narnia.
and they get cupcakes or whatever.
Lazy
Sunday.
Lazy Sunday. So that was that video on YouTube was one of the catalysts for YouTube's growth.
Exactly.
And when I saw that, I was like, oh my goodness, here we go again. I mean, this happened once again. Like, it's all going poof. We got to figure out what's next. But this time, unlike the last times where we had nothing to lose, I mean, we had nothing. This time we had a global brand. I mean, we had, people knew us all over the world, and I said, okay, now is the time to raise money, because we have a real asset here, and we're going to need some way of bridging into the future. And so the initial thought was, we'll produce branded entertainment. You're going to have these big distributors. It's no longer going to be just direct from JibJab. Big distributors like YouTube, brands are going to want to play, but they're not going to want to be associated with the really lowbrow stuff that was getting, UGC. Everything was UGC was like, couldn't avoid that acronym for probably 3 years. They don't want to be associated with that. They're going to want to do high quality comedy programming. Let's go raise a round of capital so we can pursue branded entertainment. And we raised our first round of capital, $6.4 million in 2006 from Polaris Venture Partners. And then we produced our first branded entertainment, which was a huge success from a optics perspective. We had John Landis, the director of Blues Brothers, Animal House, Trading Places, Coming to America, greatest comedy, American comedy director, did a sketch comedy competition with sketch comedy troops across the country. Verizon sponsored it. We were on Jay Leno, my brother, myself, and John Landis. Took about 6 months. We did this whole big thing. We didn't make a dime. So here I had just raised 6.4 December of 2006 or 7. Sorry, I had just raised 6.4 million on this concept that I now knew was never going to work at scale, and I had to figure out what to do. And that's when I stumbled into the opportunity in direct-to-consumer greeting cards.
Well, again, your ability to read a 10K, right, is what clues you into
this.
this.
Yes.
Tell me that story.
So we launched the Great Sketch Experiment in October 2007, and that holiday my brother and I are at my dad's, and I'm just in a full-blown panic about the fact that I just took $6.4 million for an idea that was not going to work. And so we started desperately looking for where's the business models and content out there. We wanted to get out of the advertising business because what we realized was marketers are not necessarily, they're detrimental to their own best interests, right? Especially in the early days. People didn't know how to subtly market their products on the internet. So everything was very heavy-handed. And so we wanted to find a direct-to-consumer business. And I realized greeting cards, people were paying for greeting cards. And so I found a 10K for American Greetings, which was public at the time. And I saw that they had an $80 million a year subscription e-card business. And I went to my brother, I said, look at this. And he said, I'm not effing making e-cards, Gregg. And I said, don't think about what they are. Think about what they can be. Like, we can make them cool. Yes, they're terrible. That doesn't mean we shouldn't do it. That means there's a real opportunity here. Let's go make them cool. And to his credit, and always to his credit, he is the most open-minded and he's able to orient himself around business opportunities better than any artist I know. And sure enough, we started looking into it and thinking about it and brainstorming it, and we launched a subscription greeting service at the end of 2007. Yeah, sorry. 2006 was Great Sketch Experiment. 2007, we launched our greeting card product, and the key differentiator was personalization. So you could upload a photo and you could put yourself and your friends into it.
So that's a subscription business, and so it's no longer a hit-based business that you're in. It's more you can relax a little bit.
A little bit, but we had to build a library.
Yeah.
So we couldn't relax yet because the whole business was contingent on building a big library of content. And there were a couple of aspects of the business that made the difference. One is people will pay. We realized people will pay for utility. They won't pay to watch something and consume it, but if they can do something with the content, they would pay us for it. And so that was a really big. We reoriented our thinking around. Okay.
So the idea is if I want to send my uncle a birthday card, I can put his face on it.
Yeah.
I can have him go to the moon or something. I can be creative with this stuff.
You can be creative. So the other great thing was with this land, it was lightning in a bottle. We had to have that spark. And any artist who tells you they're just going to do it over and over again is either lying to themselves or delusional. I mean, we knew we worked hard, but there was also a certain amount of luck and the muses and all that. What was great about personalization, well, cards are relevant, so you're always building around relevant topics. That's really important. But personalization gave us scale. So whereas this land, we had to tell one joke that was funny to 80 million people. With personalization, we create one template. The user injects the funny to their small circle of 10 friends.
Right.
But if enough users do that, you actually get the scale without all the creative risk of doing, that lightning in a bottle political statement. And so we got immense creative and comedic scale by giving users tools to inject the funny for their own small circle of friends. And then Facebook came along.
I was going to say
supercharged distribution.
For once, your timing is perfect.
Yes. So we got better at timing as we went along.
So it's right about this time that Facebook opens up the platform.
Yes.
And in a way, everything that you had always been doing is is right there. The sharing is right there. The address book is baked into what Facebook does. So you guys are perfect for.
So I'll say, even and because this is the Internet History Podcast, I'm going to mention. First, it was MySpace.
Right.
So the first place we were publishing, when we launched this in 2007, we launched Starring You in August 2007. We launched eCards in October of 2007. But the first place we were publishing out to was MySpace. And that's where we saw the first bit of traction. And so, wow, social networks, we knew, like, I was really tuned into social networks because the mechanics of a social network were the same mechanics of emailing your entire address book something.
Right.
And when you think about it, it's exactly the same thing, only the social network doesn't come with any feeling of obligation to respond to the user who pushed something at you. It's more of a passive experience. But when I saw the social nets, that's where I said, oh, okay, now we've got this kind of 1 to 100 distribution is coming back online. So it was MySpace first, but what Facebook did, I mean, why Facebook is Facebook today is because of the platform opening, which was the most genius business technology strategic move, since I've been in the business for 18 years, giving third-party products the ability to integrate the social elements into their own products. So now, when you came to JibJab, when we built on platform, you press a Facebook Connect button, and all of a sudden you see all your friends on our site. When you want to cut your friend's face out and put them in a video, you don't have to go somewhere, download a photo.
Because you would have access to the photos.
We just pull them right into our products. And so we were one of the first builders on Facebook platform, and we got a lot of accolades for kind of the way we did integrations back then. It was a fun time. It was a great time. You could be super innovative on your product, and especially with what we did with photos. I mean, it was a dream from the social data access side, but also on the distribution side. I mean, those were two pieces that helped us supercharge our product.
I want to bring us into today, but let me do that by saying, since you guys are on social from the very beginning, and you've ridden that wave all the way to now, have you seen it evolve in terms of what people share now versus what they did then? Was there a learning curve of people, like, just anything about how sharing has evolved in the time you've been doing it?
Yeah, I think it's the one really noticeable thing for us is what used to be short form is now long form. I think like attention spans have really shifted. Like, we used to say, yeah, we make 1.5-minute long videos, and people would be like, what, just 1.5 minutes, huh? Now it's like a minute. You want me to watch something
that
for
sounds
1.5 minutes?
Like a movie.
That's like a feature-length film. Come on, pal. So I would say, like, we see the attention span shrinking. And also for us, we're trying to tie into higher frequency expressions. So whereas earlier on, when Facebook first launched, we were first building on platform, it was about the Christmas card or the birthday card, like big life events. And now we're producing GIFs and really short form GIFs that can express that you can use multiple times a day, that are much shorter and lend themselves to much higher frequency usage.
Well, Sarah Lacey said of you that Gregg has never met a web or mobile platform that he couldn't exploit. So basically that's what you've done over the last decade or so. Every time the platforms shift or a new platform arises, you guys try to be there. You've been getting into the messaging space a lot the last couple of years.
Yeah, so the thing we've been able to do really well is identify new distribution channels early, and then say, okay, what kind of creative formats work for those new channels? Like, if I had to distill how did we survive 18 years of original content production and business building on the internet, that would be it. It's a combination of seeing a distribution channel and then saying, we're not going to put political satires on Facebook, but Facebook gives us access to photos and friend data. Let's create personalized videos with photos and friend data. So and now with messaging, we're not going to put 1.5-minute long Christmas cards on messengers, but we're going to put really really common everyday expressions into GIFs that people can share in a
So
much
you have
more
to
lightweight
be
way.
cognizant of what works best natively on each platform.
Exactly.
And each platform can be different.
Every platform is different, and the trick is identifying the platform and then figuring out what kinds of stories do you want to tell on that platform. So back in the email and web page days, it was political satire. In the Facebook platform, MySpace into Facebook platform, it was personalized videos with friends' photos. And now I think in the mobile, on the mobile messaging era, it's about really lightweight, fun communication.
Is it possible? So you've made this great business and this career of basically jumping from lily pad to lily pad, platform to platform. Is it, in this day and age, do you need the platforms to do what you do?
Yeah.
There's no way to do it without them.
Yeah, I would say that's the difference these days. Is every attention is consolidated, and people aren't going off and visiting random websites. I mean, even now, right now, what's happening at this moment in time is Facebook clamping down on the organic distribution of third-party publishing sites.
Yeah.
So, I mean, as tough as it was a year ago, it's going to get even tougher. I mean, you saw Google do this with, was it Panda? I forget.
Right, and Penguin.
Yeah, I mean, so you're seeing the same, what Google did to the content farms 5 years ago, maybe. We're now seeing Facebook doing on the distribution side on their platform. And what they're doing is they're herding everybody into their paid media products. So basically, if you want distribution, pay us for it. And so
that's in the end what they always do.
The platforms always move
it's
you
always
into the
free.
media. Yeah.
This is where you're going to get the eyeballs, but eventually there's no free lunch anywhere.
And you know what? No one has any right to expect a free lunch ever. So if you're in the shoes of a publisher today, you go, okay, did I use that window of time where I was lucky enough to get a free lunch to build an economic model that can now sustain in a paid marketing world? And luckily for JibJab, we can do that. And it's obviously it's not preferable. If I could reach one person organically for free versus through the paid platform, of course I would rather have it be organic. But luckily for us, we've got a model that supports paid acquisition, and so that business chugs on with some of our margin now going into the Chan Zuckerberg Foundation.
When you were on Kara's show, she pointed out that this goes back to AOL. AOL started out, they would pay you to put their content on AOL, and then a few years later, you're paying
them. Yeah.
So when you see everyone in any industry freaking out because a Facebook is changing, videos going from 5% to 4%, like, is there any advice that you could offer to people? Like, if you have to be on a platform, how can you ride the tiger and not get bit?
Don't fight it. Don't waste your time complaining about the fact that they're clamping this back, or just look for either look for ways to move into the paid media programs that they offer, or find a new business model. Honestly, this happened before. This was in the first era, the Zynga era, where Facebook was really focused on the gaming of their viral mechanics. In the Zynga era, for those who may not remember, Farmville and Vampire Bites and all these things, you have these really smart developers who could game the viral channels on Facebook and build, absurd audiences for content and products of zero value. Zynga created some great games, but there was Vampire Bites, a bunch of things that... So Facebook would change the algorithm constantly, and they'd clamp down on distribution, and you'd hear everyone, this is not fair, they're like changing the rules of the game. No, they're changing the rules of the game because their end user experience is suffering by the exploitation of their product by developers, which developers are always going to do. So they change the rules. Now I think the difference is, back then they were trying to change the bad behavior of the developers. Now the interesting thing is they've got to somehow control the psychology of their users, because the distribution algorithms that they're playing with now are about how do you make sure these things that are inspiring all of this hate and just negativity on their platform. How do you get those things out of the news feed? So before they were trying to hack their algorithms to kind of contain the growth hackers, and now they're trying to, I think they got to protect us from ourselves, our instinct to jump in on that bad fight.
You know, I feel like this has come up on several recent conversations I've had. The idea that, you know, we thought that the algorithms were more efficient than curation.
Yeah.
But it's turning out that you still need to curate the algorithms.
Yeah.
You can let them run independently, but you still got to guide them.
Yeah.
So we're coming back to this curation thing, essentially.
Yeah, I think it's really challenging. I mean, just because I think some of the data signals that they have comments on a post. Well, that necessarily isn't a good thing. I mean, people could be tearing each other to shreds in those comments.
Right.
And so,
or even sharing, like if you're sharing something that you're appalled by.
Yeah.
Is that a feel-good act?
Yeah, no. I mean, it's so really now they've got to start getting into like they're altering their algorithms to around human psychology. It's really interesting. You think about it. Like, how do they do that? They start doing sentiment analysis on comments and all sorts of other things. I mean, it's like before it was just keep the bad players from creating bad experiences for our users, and now it's like prevent the users from creating bad experiences.
Well, it's
for
also
our users.
learning the lesson that for this whole time period, it's, well, if they're doing it more, if the users are doing it more, that's clearly better.
Yeah.
And they're realizing there's gradations to that.
Yeah. Yeah. And more may not be better long term. I mean, how many people are turning off Facebook?
Right.
Or visiting less frequently because it makes them feel terrible about themselves.
Before we wrap up, could I put on my historian hat for a second and talk specifically about video on the web?
Sure.
This is a podcast. Audio is still essentially unsiloed. Can you, from your perspective of having dealt with YouTube coming and taking over video, why has it been with video? Obviously, Facebook is trying to come into the space, even Twitter and people like that. Why is it that YouTube captured video and has never let it go? I'm going to posit a theory that it's the search aspect of it.
Yeah.
That even if you put something on Vimeo, you still want it to be on YouTube too, because that's how people will find it.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
But just...
I think you're exactly right. I think YouTube is the second biggest search engine. I don't know if that's still true.
Still holds, right?
Still holds, right? And so I think that today, that's probably the longevity piece of it. But early on, don't forget, in 2006, which is only 10, little over, well, now 12, but God, that was a really tough technical problem to do at scale. So, I mean, audio, the technology challenges aren't nearly as great, right? You had Odeo, right? The predecessor to Twitter, and Ev Williams. I mean, I think with video, what it had was an immense amount of capital requirements to do at scale at the beginning, and then search. And then Chad Hurley, and they built a great product. It was the right product at the right time as mobile phones were coming on board with video, the ability to shoot video, and I think they just nailed the product. And then they accessed the capital, and then it became just about search. And then that became the place that you would go. I'll also say, early on, I think it was pirated content. Before nowadays they've pulled it in, but that business was built on the ability to find things that you should not have been able to find.
They pulled off the Napster model successfully.
Yes, exactly. They transitioned. They transitioned well enough into legitimate controls around piracy.
Well, and then now YouTube's among the people that are having this problem with the curation.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, now they're dealing with it as well, right? Yeah.
So, final question about virality, which obviously you've transitioned now to subscription business, so it's not a hit-based business or whatever. But again, since you've been doing this from the day one of virality and memifying things, and if I asked you to write me a book to explain how things go viral, could you do it? Is there like a formula that you think you have a sense of, or does no one really know what takes off?
create something of value that people want to share.
Wait, so the book is do good stuff?
Create quality product that people authentically want to share. Because if you do that, then no algorithm's going to stop you. Honestly, that's how we made it through that first wave of Facebook clamping down on developers. Like, at the end of the day, if you're creating something that people enjoy, that's got authentic value, they're going to share it, and it's going to get past any of the changes any platform makes to gamify things. So, that's been our model from day one, and it's always worked. Virality's gotten a lot harder. It's just it's gotten a lot harder as platforms consolidate.
Is that because of noise too? There's so much out there.
Yeah. So definitely on the video side. I mean, on the video side, absolutely. But just even on the platform side, I mean, mobile is very, very hard to achieve virality. I mean, they just don't have the dynamics you had when you're working in a news feed or over email and links.
So what is JibJab's model today? Like we said, you're on the messaging platforms now. You're doing things like, is it like sharing GIFs and things like that?
Yeah. It's all about content for expression. So giving people tools that enable them to be funnier in their digital lives. So right now it's about lightweight expression for messaging. I'm really bullish on iMessage platform. I think Apple's built a great platform, and it's we're in one of these windows where it's a behavior. Now it's no longer about the technology, it's about how long does it take for the behavioral adoption. So just like in this land, people said, you're never gonna believe this, my dad emailed this to me. Maybe about 3 or 4 years ago, my mom started using emoji. I think we're like, a couple of years, away from people really engaging in app-like services embedded in messengers. And so that's our next big bet.
What beyond that is the next lily pad, things like AR and VR and all these things we've been hearing is coming right around the corner?
We experiment with AR. We have augmented reality in one of our apps now. It's called JibJab Camera, where you can actually take personalized JibJab style stickers and put them into augmented reality. Super cool. VR we're not touching. It's just, I think it's more in the gaming space. It's not necessarily in our wheelhouse. But augmented reality is really exciting, and I think there's some really interesting, fun things to do. I mean, it makes the world a canvas. Like, that's a pretty exciting thing for creative people to tackle.
This wasn't on my list of questions, but I'll end with this because you made me think of it when we've been talking. Your career story is so much about pivoting, is the polite word for it or whatever. But the ability to be nimble and change, in your case, as platforms evolve and things like that. But you also mentioned how you didn't take capital for so long, and that almost gave you more freedom. And the freedom specifically to be like, we're not dead yet.
Yeah.
Had you taken the money, people would have told you were dead.
Totally.
But you did. So just talk a little bit about that, about being nimble and maybe starting small, allowing you to persevere when you would have had to stop otherwise.
Absolutely. Yeah, I think it's with everything, with investors, with employees. The more people you need to bring along with you, every moment you spend in those early days, especially communicating why you're making certain moves, are moments that you're taking away from actually making those moves. So for us, not taking capital early was absolutely critical. And the same thing saying lean on the employee side, not only because it lets you move faster. It's way easier to move fast when you have 5 employees than 50, but also to make sure when you're building your team and you're growing your organization, that you're making a commitment to those people, and that you can uphold that commitment and bring them along on the ride wherever it is you're going.
Gregg Spiridellis, it's a really fascinating ride.
It's been fun.
Thank you for sharing that with us.
Yeah, thanks. I appreciate it.
If this is the first time you're listening to this podcast, please subscribe to us on your podcast app of choice. There's plenty more great internet history where that came from. And if you're a longtime listener, then you know what to do to help us out. Rate and review us on iTunes. Because iTunes gives credit to reviews and ratings, and the more great reviews we get, the more people will discover us. As always, there's more info on our website, www.internethistorypodcast.com. The show's Twitter handle is @NetHistoryPod, and my personal Twitter is @BrianMCC. Thanks for listening.